Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 11 of the High Frequency Podcast. Today is the first episode of 2023, so thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope you all had a great festive season, a great new year, listened to lots of music, went to lots of gigs, and most importantly, tried to find some time in there for some relaxation, because our industry is pretty much year-round, and of course, it is quite hard to get that relaxation in sometimes, so I hope you all managed to get some in. If you haven't already listened to the last episode, which was episode number 10, featuring myself, please do go listen to that. I did thank everyone for listening to the podcast for the last year and gave some interesting stats on the podcast and how well it's been doing. I also gave a bit of an outline and a bit of an overview on who I am and who the host is of this podcast and where I've come from and how I've got to where I am now and where I intend to go in the future. I also did a 100% unreleased productions mix from myself on that podcast as well. You can catch the mix over on my SoundCloud if you haven't already listened to it. And the link to my SoundCloud will be in the show notes below. So please do go and listen to it. Let me know what your thoughts are on some of the tracks that I've put in that mix. And hopefully I'll get some of those tracks released in 2023. Just before I get onto the introduction about the guest today, I do have a release coming out on Robin Fett's label, Need Music, in just about a week. So I'm really excited to get that release out there. It's been sat on my hard drive for about a year and a half, so it's definitely been collecting dust, and I really did want to get it out there somehow, and luckily enough, Robin Fett picked it up, so I'm pretty stoked about that. So do look out for that, and do please support me by buying the record. So today's guest is called Sarah Crowther, and you'll probably best know her as Mamadafunk. She's a multi-genre DJ with a bias towards keeping it funky, from deep tech house to funky house, and kind of mishmashes all that and combines it with old school funk and hip hop, which I have a massive amount of respect for, anyone who can do that. Really, really well on stage as well. And she does have an alternative DJ persona, I guess, called MamaPsy, where she plays a little bit more techno, a little bit of the harder stuff, a little bit of the side trance and progressive house, that type of stuff. But all in all, she's been around on the scene for quite some time. She's definitely done her time on the New Zealand festival scene. I kept on seeing her name pop up absolutely everywhere. She was on lineups on festivals, local gigs, and these gigs were from Auckland, well, all the way from Kerikeri, stretching all the way down to Queenstown. So she definitely has made a name for herself in New Zealand, and she does this full time as well. So we really need to support this lady and make sure that she knows that she's got our support, and let's keep her going with a full-time career in music, because what's better? I can tell you what, absolutely nothing. So please welcome to the podcast, Mamadafunk. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah Crowther, who goes by the name of Mamadafunk. Welcome and thanks for joining me. How's your week been going, Sarah?
Hi, Adam. Yeah, my week is busy, always busy. Yeah, just about to fly to Nelson tomorrow, actually, for a gig. So revving up for that and preparing for the onslaught of summer.
That's right, yeah. I've seen your name keep popping up all over Instagram with gigs, festivals and stuff like that. So do you do this full time then, or have you got a separate job?
So for the last year, I've been doing it full time. Started to just do event management since we moved from Nelson to Northland. I decided to give this a go. I don't know how long I'm going to last doing event management. There's a lot happening since COVID. I don't know if you've seen how much is popping up, but there's quite a lot happening. And so competition is fierce, which is great. It's great. The market is flooded with cool events happening all over the place. But yeah, for now, I'm doing it full time.
Cool. That's pretty ambitious. I always respect anyone who does this full time, because it's still a pretty unique niche kind of thing, although because we're immersed in it we don't seem to think it is, but from the outsider looking in, it really is. So that's pretty daring, so I respect that completely.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not making millions from it, let's say that, though. But it's fun and creative, which is what I love.
Yeah, same. Yeah, and sometimes I think Sometimes I think if you're doing something that you enjoy and something that's creative and fills that kind of that scratches that creative itch, sometimes I think you can kind of pass on the hundreds and thousands of dollars that you may earn doing a full time job slaving away for someone else.
It's definitely a lifestyle choice. Yeah, yeah, but I agree, and I'm blessed actually that I'm able to have this time to be able to do this and give it a whirl. And it's been awesome meeting and new people, creatives along this journey. There's so many amazing, creative, talented people in New Zealand. It blows my mind.
There absolutely is, and to be perfectly honest with you, this is one of the main reasons why I started this podcast, because I kind of saw that there wasn't really anyone, apart from events, of course, in New Zealand, that was really attempting to showcase the amazing artists that we've got in this country and Australia. And I wanted to start the podcast so that it gives people some sort of space, a platform to really showcase who they are and tell people their journey and give them a bit of an insight into what music they make. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to come back to that events thing actually, because I didn't really know that you're in the event space. So excuse my ignorance, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But I do want to know. I always ask my guests, who are you? How have you got to where you are today? Who is Mamadafunk? Give us a bit of an insight.
Okay, so Mamadafunk is just a music lover and a lover of dancing. I I probably didn't realize it at the time, but I would say my first instinct to become a DJ started really young, although it was a lot longer before I actually ever brought my music onto a dance floor or a public platform. But I had the old style in my bedroom when I was a little girl, stacker of singles. So I used to buy singles with my pocket money, and when I got a collection, I would stack them and I would organize them. You could stack 6 single vinyl singles, and I would stack them and change it around and dance in my bedroom, and always wanted to be in charge of the music. It was never any good when other people had their music on it, always. So I think I started quite young with that instinct, but I was probably more of a mixtape queen than a DJ in my teenage years and 20s. So I was a late bloomer. And then when the rave scene started happening, I'm giving away my age now, really, aren't I? And started getting into that kind of music, um, electronic dance music, house music, and techno, and trance, of course. Back in the day, I just loved being on the dance floor, but it was a very male-driven industry. I never used to see female DJs very often back then, but apparently there was loads in Goa. So there you go. One of my good friends, Amanda Wright, who you probably know, she was a female DJ in Goa back in the day. So it did exist, but I never knew how to get started. And always used to sneak on when there was decks empty at dawn or something like that. That's when I'd have a go, or private parties. So that's how I got started. And yeah, would love to play chill. Uh-oh. Is this recording?
Yep, should
Okay.
be.
I've got I've, I've got a call coming through in my ears. Sorry.
Ah, right.
So
I
you'll have
can't
to
hear
cut
that.
this bit up. It's all right. It'll stop in a minute.
That's all good. I quite like the rawness, so we'll just probably keep this in.
Yeah, right. Okay. Funny. Now to switch that off, I've lost you completely. Anyway, I'll keep talking.
That's all good. Go
So
for it.
yeah. So there we go. So that's pretty much how I got started. I would say that my first dance floors were just private parties, and then I had a baby, and so gave it all away, but never gave away my love of music. And as my son got older, I actually started realizing how much easier it was with digital to be able to go out there and DJ. And started, because I used to carry around, the big folders, like the big vinyl or leather folders, and it would be full of CDs. So I never really DJ'd vinyl. I always started with CDs, and it was full of CDs. And I started with old school funk, hence my name. So I would have all of these rare CDs, and at one party, unfortunately, my folders disappeared, and so gave up completely and had a massive break. Had my baby. As he got older, I just missed it, I guess, and started to really want to go back. And at that point, was living in Golden Bay, and Golden Bay is the most amazing place for parties. As nearly one a week, or sometimes two or three a week, and lots of music lovers there, and some amazing DJs that actually live there, and producers that live in Golden Bay. And started, as my son went older, going to the parties and trying, pushing to get sets. And it just has really built up from there. I have been passionate about females getting a chance to get into the DJ booth, and started a little collective called Divas on Decks with my girlfriends. And just for fun, we would play lots of bars, parties. We started then getting booked for festivals. I started getting booked for festivals, and it just grew from there, I guess, just like anybody's career. Maybe a little bit about who you know as well, but the more you play, the better you get, and got completely hooked to the point where I gave up my job, and here I am.
That's a great story. I love that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think when I first started DJing, even in 2007, 2008, it was very male dominant. I think even back then, I only saw one or two female DJs when I used to go out clubbing quite a lot, and that was in the UK, where the scene is huge. So that's really cool to hear. I do have to ask, obviously, because you are a female in the DJ industry, how have you found it? Because I suppose you are the first female guest that I've got on this podcast. And I've chosen that for a particular reason, because I've observed that you've been doing it a lot longer than most female DJs in this country. And you've obviously got a lot more experience than most of them as well. So you would have been through a specific transition into this shift of, we have no female DJs, to we now have quite a few, and it's growing pretty fast right now. So how would you say it was back in the day in comparison to now? Like, if you could sum it up.
Um, I think the hardest thing was being trusted for guys that we could cope technically. And I think there's always been quite a lot of competition from DJs in general to be able to get behind the decks. So I don't know if some males saw us as a bit of a threat. Maybe I'm not sure what it was, but I definitely was shy to begin with anyway. So it would have been hard for me, even if there was lots of females doing it. I think it would have been hard anyway, standing up in front of a bunch of people and being responsible for a dance floor experience is pretty full on, and not, I don't like a lot of eyes on me, believe it or not. So a lot of the time it's quite hard standing up there without that feeling of, oh, you've got to fight your way in. But I think because it was always very competitive, uh, that guys by their nature are a lot more confident to do that fight, to push their way in, because that's the way it felt to me. Was like, you really had to push, you really had to be confident, and almost fight for the right to get up there onto the decks and have you go. And I still feel it's like that, but now it's accepted around the world, that there's amazing female producers and DJs. It's some lineups, it's getting close to 50-50 in this country. But I still am amazed to see some lineups with one or two token females on the lineup, and that has always upset me. since I began. It's always been, where are the females? I know a lot of women that are really good at this. Why are they not getting booked? So yeah, I guess it's changed heaps, but the respect has come slowly and it's growing all the time. And I think what we need now is a lot more of the female DJs to actually produce, and then we'll see more and more of them, because that's what's growing now as well, is being able to show, oh yeah, I have this skill, but also I think it's a natural progression to want to go in that direction and want to play your own tracks out. And so I think that's what needs to grow. And those women that have done that, they're massive on the world circuit. When you think of what you call it, Anna and Charlotte DeWitt, and they're on every big lineup everywhere you see. And there's some of the big female DJs. They get them booked all around the world because they're producing, and I think that helps.
It 100% helps. In fact, it's one of the main reasons why I started producing as well, because I know it helps, and I know that it gives you a better understanding of music as a whole. But I completely agree with you. I think we still see lineups. I know that on Instagram, when I'm looking at lineups from around the world, you still see lineups where there's only one female on the lineup, and maybe five males. And whilst I still think that's a step in the right direction, there's I do believe that there's too many people with the ability to DJ on the planet for booking agents to really decide who to put on these days. We've got so many people. So I completely agree with you. In order to separate yourself from the rest of the market, who are just going out there and playing everyone else's music, try making your own. There's so much education online these days. I've been producing for less than 2 years, and I've already got releases coming out on international labels because I've absolutely immersed all my time in education, because it's all there. All you have to do is look for it or pay for it. So it is there, and I guess you rewind 10 years ago, none of that was there. you had to
Yeah.
you had to find your way around the platform, Ableton, whatever it is. So, have you done any producing?
So nothing that's been released.
Hmm.
I like the way you say you completely immersed yourself in it, because when I started, I want to call it dabbling, but when I first started with that, I hopped onto Ableton like a lot of people, and it was it. I just couldn't navigate my way around it. And I would look at podcasts, and I would look at, we've got the amazing Tom Cosm in this country, who's the guru of Ableton. And I've even managed to have a couple of chats with him. And I do know that you need to immerse yourself. And it took so much time that it was easier for me to just carry on DJing and kind of push that behind than it was to fight my way through. And then somebody recommended Logic to me.
Oh
And
yeah,
when I hopped on Logic, it changed everything for me.
interesting.
Yeah, and it is really interesting, because I know that Ableton is kind of more the platform that a lot of really good producers use, and you can use it live. But Logic for me just seemed to make more sense. The name really
It has more
suit.
logic.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think it's the way your mind works with these platforms and how the layout is. And when I've been lucky enough to join Sensornauts on their production weekends that they've been putting on, especially for women. And, I've sat down with the likes of Ed Zuccolo and Paige Julia, and other producers who have given us their time and wisdom. And that was, and also watch things online. And now I have some tracks, and I've also sat with an amazing producer in Golden Bay, Jules, who helped me, who sat down with me for a whole day and helped me realize where I want to be before I release something, which means I have to immerse myself more in that than I do in my DJing, which has been really hard for me, because my DJing has taken off in the last 2 years massively, that I put a lot of time and effort into DJing. I don't just collect a few tracks, and I've got a whole different way maybe of DJing, or a different mindset of DJing, where the creative process takes so much of my time that I find it hard to give my time to production. And when I do sit down and produce, days go by and I don't seem to get very far. And I think that's potentially the perfectionist in me, and nervousness to release a track. What, because now people do know my name a little bit more, so they might be expecting something incredible when I'm a beginner at production. So I definitely am a little bit shy of putting those releases out there, but it will happen. It will happen.
Yeah.
I've got a few tracks that are nearly there now. Yeah.
That's really, really cool to hear, and I agree with you. You know, Ableton's not for everybody, and I think that's why there's so many production platforms out there, because they all work in different ways, and some people click with others and not others, and that's fine. Um, you are right. I think you 100% have to be able to dedicate your time to production to be able to learn it, because it's only now, maybe almost 2 years into my production journey, I've spent every day in the studio, unless I've been away from home at some point. And even then, I sometimes take my laptop. I, it's quite geeky, but I know that if you want to get good at it, you have to be able to sit down for even just a couple of hours a week, and that way you're not kind of losing your traction or your flow with everything, and you're building on top of the skills that you're learning that week. So the fact that you've got to this stage, knowing how many gigs that you do, is pretty incredible. Because I know that if I got booked, I probably wouldn't put as much time into production, because like you, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist with my DJ sets and building them in a way that I think is good, rather than just chucking a few tracks together. So yeah, that's really cool, and I'm looking forward to hearing them. And I can completely relate to you about the perfectionist not wanting to release stuff, but I got to a stage, probably similar to you, where I had a bunch of tracks and I was like, I hate all of them, and it's because I'd listened to them 100,000 times each, and to some fresh ears, someone else that you get to listen to it, they're like, this is really, really good. Why are you not releasing this? And I'm like, I hate it. I've listened to it like 1,000 times. And you always think you can do better. And I think that's a little bit of the perfectionist in us both, by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you spend so much of your time, and I like, I'm addicted to having music, that's how I find my music. I'm just listening all the time, trying to find something that excites me, and go, ooh, when you hear a certain bass line, or you hear a little riff, or there's something that really excites you, and you're like, oh my God, I know what I can do with that. And I know how I can play with that in a set, and, or I know what set that's going to be really great for. And I'm like, washing the dishes, listening to music, doing the vacuuming, headphones on, walking the dogs, music. It's kind of like that you're listening to incredible, amazing producers that are doing it all the time, and that have got a formula, and they're just, that. And I think those producers, once they get to a certain stage as well, and they're playing big gigs, that's where the money is, that they can afford to have it mastered really well as well, which, when you're the likes of you and we can't send it to some guy somewhere in a studio that's going to make it sound so fat and so awesome. We just have to try and muddle through it ourselves. And so that's such a big part of it. Like, I can put something together, but then making it sound like how I imagine it should sound in my head is another level completely that I haven't quite gotten to yet. But I think that probably takes years and years, So I need to DJ less and do that more. And at one point I was going to do that, and then all of a sudden it's like, ah, oh, you want me to play that? Yes, yes, yes. And all of a sudden you don't. You kind of put it on a back burner. And that's where I'm at the moment. Absolutely. At the moment, I'm not doing what you said, which is I've lost the flow. which I had very much during COVID. So that's when a lot of my production was happening, when there was no gigs happening. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. In terms of the mastering thing, I agree with you. I don't I don't necessarily think we have to send it off to a perfect mastering engineer, because you can learn to master your own tracks. I've managed to sort of learn the craft of that. So if you do want any sort of help or tips with that, I'm more than happy to help.
I would love it.
But I use
Always.
Ableton, so I don't know if we might be on a different page, but I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Always up for guidance and help. And that's another thing I think is we get a little bit proud, or, I'm under no illusions as to where my skills lie in that. And when, but I must have a decent ear to be booked, and I guess to be booked and to be playing as often as I'm playing. So it's just about learning how to actually use the software to be able to get to that point that's taking longer than what I thought it would. And I'm a really impatient person. So, yeah, guidance and help is always welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, I think sometimes as well, when you do understand the software, you never truly understand it because you're always learning. But when you do understand it to a certain level, the production does happen really, really quick. Like I can make a track now in a day if I want to. When I first started producing, it would take me 4 months. So it literally is. If you spend time on it, it it does speed up quite exponentially. So, but don't let that put you off. Excuse me. You'll absolutely. I'm sure your productions sound fantastic. So I want to hear some of this.
Not right now.
No, not right now, but when you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So, let's go back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast, that you've gone into events now. So I presume events management. Have you got your own brand? Are you managing events? How's that going?
Yeah, so it's been going real well. I do. I've got Mama Management. It's quite a mouthful, actually. And I've always dabbled in it a little bit. So I mentioned Divas on Decks, and that I've got a bunch of really good friends in Golden Bay. Female friends who are awesome DJs, and as I said, for all of us, it was quite hard to get the gigs, and so I said, come on, let's do our own gig, which they were all game to do. And so Divas on Decks was born, and we did little bar gigs, and the odd festival. And then, but I like Divas on Decks to be any female DJs, and so as I got to know how many there were out there, it was like, oh, it it was an opportunity to get to know some people better and to have fun with my girlfriends at first. And it was our turn on the decks, and it was always a busy night, always fun and fruity. And I think there's some element of female DJs that they have so much fun with it, and they take it a little bit less seriously. Maybe that's what it was. It was always about the fun, Divs on Decks. And so, yeah, that's when I first started putting on gigs, was just for that. And then I wanted to be inclusive. I didn't want to be becoming what I didn't like in the first place, which is Sarah's only about the female DJs, and wanted to hang out with my male DJ friends. And so I've kind of on and off always put them on, but it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and there's risk involved in events. And I've definitely learned over the years what works and what doesn't, and I try and keep it small. But now I've started doing some collaborations, which is moving forward, is where I'd like to put my energy. So I'm now working with the amazing Amanda Wright, who I mentioned earlier. Amanda Mania is her DJ name, and she is one of the founders of Splore Festival. So which I feel quite honoured and blessed to call her my friend, but not only that, to call her now a partner. And we started on the back of Divas on Decks, started an all-female, non-binary kind of transgender small festival. It's really small, and we're going to keep it small, called Brazen, which will be happening. At the moment, it's happening once a year, but we'd like to maybe make it twice a year. And we had our first one back in May, and we've got our next one in April of next year. And I've also working with an amazing lady called Rachel Stanway, who's based in Tauranga. She's been doing Red Lounge sessions for years and years. And we did our first collaboration this year called the Thrift Shop Ball, which is, I really love performance. So talking about collaborations, I like there's other things happening. I've always liked visuals and beautiful lighting shows, and I love dancers. So I've started working with dancers, and Thrift Shop Ball and Brazen both really embrace all of those arts, visual arts, performance arts, dancers, burlesque. So like to put it all on and create DJ more as a show than just, somebody standing in front of the decks and giving you an amazing dance floor is awesome. But yeah, it's just like I've just changing it up and creating something a little bit different and having a little bit of a point of difference. So that's kind of, I feel like, where my future is going to be, is putting on more of shows, incorporating DJing, VJs, anything really. I'm game for anything that's entertaining but is music based, and people can still move. They're not sat down, and they're not static watching a show. They're part of the show because they're moving to the beat as well. So that's kind of where I think my future might head. Yeah, as well as produce. Maybe.
Of course.
Yeah.
I love it. That's great. And you're absolutely right. It enhances the entire experience for the crowd, doesn't it? Rather than just a DJ. Look, I'm all for crowds that are really just in touch with the music and that you don't need any other stimulus. But I do think that it should be more of a show, and we've got to remember that music is art, and why not incorporate other forms of art to enhance that entire experience for the crowd? I see that as just a great package to bring as an event. So, where are you hosting these events? All across the country, or?
Yeah, so the Thrift Shop Ball was in Tauranga. Brazen is on the shipwrecked site, which is Te
Yeah.
Ari.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just on the border between the Auckland district and Northland, so about an hour and a half out of Auckland. This weekend I'm going down to Nelson. That's my own gig as Mama Management. And I work with a lovely crew at it's kind of mostly a restaurant and cafe, but on a weekend they turn it into they host events, and they do a lot of bands as well. But I've been working with them for now maybe 3 years, putting on events at a bar called Deville. Yeah, but I'll put on an event anywhere. I do find that some places work more than others. I've been doing little mini events up here with a local brewery, who are amazing to work with as well. And they've got a beautiful space there. So I really hope that grows. But Northland has a very, very small electronic dance music scene. So we've got a small catchment area. So yeah, hopefully that grows. At that particular place, but I'm new up here as well. People don't know me as well as they do down south, I guess.
Yeah. So obviously you're all over the country, which is fantastic to see. I know before this podcast recording, we'd had a brief chat about you being overseas at one point as well. Have you played overseas, and if so, how did you manage that?
So yeah, I when I was younger, only at uni parties.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Those are
yeah.
the best though.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and it was, I don't even know if I'd call it DJing really, but in charge of music, I'd call it. I moved away from England when I was quite young, so never really got the opportunity, but recently went back this summer and had an amazing opportunity to be introduced to the people at Wilderness Festival, which is quite a big festival in the UK, and also Secret Garden Festival, and played a few sets at English festivals for the first time ever, which is funny because that's where I grew up and they were my first dance floor experience. But I moved away from the UK when I was very young. So, and the rave scene was just beginning, but there was certainly a big club scene, which I was often at. So that's where, I guess that's where my love of electronic music started growing, was back in the days where it changed from just pop music to you could close your eyes and get taken on a journey, and it wasn't stop start or kind of consistent loops and really bad mixing of the disco era, and it started being a fluid journey. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, Secret Garden Festival, I got to play out of the window of a double-decker bus
Oh,
with
cool.
a crew from Africa Burn, and that was probably my favorite set. I also sometimes I go back and play around with hip hop, and so I managed to play like a hip hop rap kind of glitchy set in another little area at Secret Garden, and then I played a house and techno set at Wilderness, which was fun with a crew. I'm trying to remember the name of the bar now, and they're going to kill me because I've forgotten. But it
They
was
probably
it
won't
was
be
a
listening to this.
you never know,
That's
you
true.
never know. But I'll get told off by Krista. This is amazing. So an amazing group of people. There's so many that put on festivals here, but the Busy Movement they're called, and
Oh
they
yeah.
put on. You've heard of them,
Yeah, well,
yeah?
I think they're working with. They're doing that Abracadabra festival that you're playing at, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's happening at Christmas. Um, that'll be happening before this goes out, but they've got another one in March. I'd love to give a plug to all of these amazing. There's people that work so hard on these events, and being in the event business now, um, seeing how hard you can work for the love of it, because it is for the love of it. Like people that work in these non-commercial, and when I'm saying non-commercial, there's not much sponsorship. There's no big bars or anything like that is in some of the really big commercial festivals that do happen over the kind of Christmas, New Year time. That's where they start making money, and they've got big stages. But these smaller festivals, they're the ones that I love. Yeah, and that's what New Zealand is. So the amount of production, the amount of love, that you can feel it at these small festivals, and they're actually the ones that I love. That you can go and play on a big stage and earn quite decent money, but the experience isn't the same as the smaller ones. I feel that's my own personal preference, and so I tend to prefer going on smaller stages with smaller crews, smaller dance floors, but the feel from the audience and the interaction you get is it's really different. It's special.
Yeah, and I think at some of those big festivals, and I've never played any, but you're often quite far away from the crowd. You're often sometimes you sometimes feel like you're standing on your own almost. So I echo those words about appreciating the smaller gigs and the smaller festivals, etc. Um, I think it has to be an intimate experience to get a real energy and a real vibe going on. It doesn't have to be, of course, but those are typically the best gigs that I've ever played in the past, where it has been a very small environment, and the room's been packed and everyone's been quite closely packed in. So yeah, completely agree with you. Um, So, what's the best gig you've ever played?
Ha.
Put you on the spot there now.
Um, yeah, no. The best. Do you know what? I think my favourite gig, and this one is a recurring one. So, and it's funny because again, it's a small stage, and I have played on some of the other stages of the festival, but at Explore, there is a little area, and it's quite famous these days, called the Lucky Star. And when they first started a renegade stage, they had a little umbrella and a table in their zone, and that grew and grew, and now it's a recognized zone in its own right. And a fantastic, it's just always the best fun. A fantastic crew that are basically gypsies that tour with the extravaganza fair all year round, and then they dip into Explore every year, and they put on little bands as they travel around the country. They do little gigs in small towns. They now have a bunch of us DJ friends all over the country, and whenever they're in town, you like go and visit them. I'll play us some tunes, and you're in a little marquee and you play some tunes. But at Explore, they started to give me a set on a Saturday morning, and you can't even get into the zone. It's so packed, and the stage is on a truck, or it used to be on a truck. It still is on a truck, I think, that bounces around. You have to hold on to you because people can climb up. And so you've got half of the crowd, there's no room in the zone, and you've got half the crowd on stage with you. You can't actually see the crowd. You've got a bunch of people on the stage with their backs to you dancing, and they're your backup dancers. And it's the most electrifying, pumping, kind of exciting sets I'll ever play. And I was lucky enough to be given the same set time year after year after year of this, when everybody, they're just not ready to finish. They're that really excited zone. It's like normally would start sometime between 3 and 4 a.m. And my job, or my brief, was always like, you've got to bring them down, and then all the zones close and everybody's going to bed, or they've got to go to bed, and the last thing the festival wants is 2,000-3,000 people trying to start a party because they're not ready to finish partying in the camping area. And it's a family festival, waking everybody up. So it was always the one that I look forward to, because I could start pumping but slowly bring it down. And I love doing that. I love doing that into dawn, where it's coming up and it's beautiful. The sun's coming up, it's beautiful. And letting people down gently into dawn, it was always a gift of a set time to be given, and was always amazing fun. So I'd say, yeah, that's definitely my favorite. If it's not the biggest stage, it's the biggest vibe.
Sounds absolutely awesome. I'd love to play there one day.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
bus sounds pretty brutal. Is it on a bus, or did you say where people
I
are
think
climbing on it?
it's on it's on a
A
truck.
truck.
So they made a stage out of a truck, and it was always really bouncy. They kind of like, it got to the point where it was almost too much. You would have to, at the time, I don't do that anymore, but at the time I would HID with my computer, so my computer would be on a laptop stand, and I wasn't just putting in a USB stick, which is kind of what most of us do now. So I'd be holding onto my computer in case it was bounce off the table. It was crazy. It was mad, but fun, And people could, anybody, the crowds can all get to you, and all kinds of shenanigans, people trying to hand you joints, and you name it, everything happened out there. You might have to put a beep over there.
No, not at all. There's no beeps on this podcast. I don't think you'd be able to play
Yeah.
any of that on that truck, because it'd probably get knocked off. The needle would probably get knocked off vinyl, wouldn't it? I don't think that'd be an option.
Yeah, no, there was a couple of people that struggled with the vinyl, Serato vinyl,
Oh
that
yeah,
used
yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Well, what gigs have you got coming up then? So you've got Abracadabra over Christmas. Anything else?
Yeah. Yep. So this weekend I'm off to Nelson, but a lot of this is going to be in retrospect. Then there's a crew who are new to me in Napier, and they're putting on a party called Arcadian. So that's the following weekend, and then we've got our own little shindig up here, Christmas party at the Phat Brewery. Into the Christmas party with Abracadabra, then off to Festival. And at I'm playing my alter ego, actually, which we've not talked about, which is MamaPsy. So I get that. If you ask me again, maybe that might be my favorite. I don't know, but I'm on the main stage at that one, which is called the White Stag stage, and they do incredible visuals up there. And ever since I've been to the first time, I always looked at that stage and was one day. And so this year's I'm playing psytrance on the side stage, but I play very low key, proggy, bouncy psytrance, not full on. So that's one to look forward to. And then the Extravaganza Fair I just talked about. That's in January. Shipwrecked. Oh, the list goes on. Brazen. Oh, there's a beautiful Relish Festival, which is a beautiful one in Canterbury. That's in March. So quite a few, coming up.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Do you? I do have one more question for you. Actually, do you, when you get contacted to play a particular gig or a festival, because I understand you play a breadth of different genres and no one can really attach your name to a specific genre, do they ask you to play a specific type of music, or do they just give you free reign? Do they expect something from you? What's the story there?
Um, it's funny because I think I get mostly booked for house and techno now. And sometimes they do ask me. So on festival asked me to play the size set. I feel like my old school funk hip hop days don't ever get an outing anymore, which is a real shame. And so I've now started actually trying to remind people that I can do that. And I'm hoping to showcase that. The Busy Movement are going to so they're part of the Abracadabra crew, are going to have another festival in March, and I've specifically asked them actually if I could maybe play an afternoon set and play kind of funky, old schooly type vibes rather than the house and techno. But people like those progressive journey sets that I do, and I do like putting them together. So that's mostly what I get asked for. Yeah.
Cool, sounds good. Speaking of which, obviously you've done a mix for us today. What should the listeners be expecting from the mix?
So I've put together something really special because it felt like I knew that you were going to ask some of these questions about my history, and I just feel like I looked back and was a little bit retrospective with what I chose to play. So although it's not really so much of my hip hoppy vibes, there's still a little bit of a feel to that in there. But I've basically chosen some of those go-to tunes that I've just always loved to play out live. So it's a little bit more chill than a live set would be because of that. Because sometimes back in the day, I used to have more chill sets than I do more often these days. But it's just a bit of a mishmash of my favorite tunes. But there's definitely some in there that you can have a real good dance to. So yeah, I hope people enjoy it.
I'm sure they will. I'm really looking forward to listening to it myself now that you've mentioned that. Actually, you've got me really intrigued. So, yeah. But, Sarah, what I'll do is I'll put the links to all your social media, maybe your SoundCloud, your Instagram, in the description of this podcast. But where's the main place that people can get hold of you if they want to get in touch?
I'm really, really, really naughty and don't have a website. So probably the best place to get a hold of me is through social media. Yeah. So my Facebook or my Instagram. Yeah, it's really easy. It's just Mama Defunk. Or now I also have Mama Management NZ. So yeah, either of those two is probably the best. And then I can pass on my email after that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thanks for joining us today, Sarah, and thanks everyone for listening. I hope you enjoy Sarah's mix, and yeah, check her out at one of the upcoming gigs, maybe Shipwrecks, maybe Abracadabra, and yeah, sounds like she's got a busy summer.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Adam.